Welcome back to the farm on this beautiful early January day. I have a big project today, and that is working on replacing the greenhouse plastic. The storm that blew through in late December was not good to our greenhouses. I'll show you some of the damage here. But we have 5 greenhouses on our farm, and about every 4 to 5 or 6 years at the longest, the poly needs replaced. The light transmission gets less and less each year. It like diminishes almost 10% per year. Right over here is some damage to one of our greenhouses from the storm. That's a pretty good hole there. So we're hoping to tackle this one in the next week or two. This one's got to be done pretty quickly too. If you aren't familiar with how greenhouses work, there's 2 layers of poly, and there's air inflated between the 2 layers, kind of like a balloon, which creates an insulative layer. As you can see on this one, the top layer has been ripped off during the storm, but the bottom layer was left on. Now you might be asking yourself, why not just change the top layer, since that's the only one that blew off? Well, it's on its 4th or 5th year already, so it was time to do it this year. And there's a couple good holes on the other side. So I got 2 new rolls, and we'll take care of that one here in the next month as well. Now our biggest greenhouse here, and I call it the biggest because it's the longest, it's 148 feet. It's due for a change too. But there was no way I was going to tackle 5 greenhouses in 1 year. I've never done that. I've never done more than 2 in 1 year. So to do 4 is going to be quite the undertaking. Today we're working on this one. And you can see we had quite a bit of damage to this 60-foot greenhouse right here. And there's a pretty good hole right here too. Now, if that was the only damage we had on this greenhouse, I would probably tape that hole with some poly patch tape and try to get one more season out of it. First thing we're gonna do is remove these red ropes that zigzag up and down the roll-up side. So this one they have crank handles on them, and you can roll these sides up for ventilation during the summer. And then remove these eye bolts so we can pop out the poly lock that holds the poly in. And then we have to remove all of these Tech screws, which are placed about every 1.5 foot on that aluminum lath all the way down. And that's what holds the poly, screws the poly on to the roll bar that's behind that lath. After all that's removed, the next step would be to remove the wiggle wire. It locks the poly into place in that little channel here. You may not be able to see this from the camera very well, but this greenhouse is leaning like that direction from years and years of very strong south winds. So as soon as we get that wiggle wire off along the top channel, I'm going to tie some chains on my forklift, and we're going to try to straighten up this end wall of this greenhouse. All right, now that the ropes have been removed and the eye bolts holding the rope, we can pop these poly locks off. A couple good smacks, and they pop right out just like that. So we're going to take all these out all the way down. So the wiggle wire comes out pretty easily. There's 4-footers and 6-footers, and this one's obviously a 6-footer. There's some nice heat coming out of here. Even though it's only 35 degrees out, it's about 80 inside the greenhouse. So as soon as I pulled that back, you can just feel that summertime temperatures coming out of there. And this side is completely free. Let's get all these ropes off first. Now we just gotta simply back out these eye bolts. Only got like 6 of them down the whole length of the greenhouse. We're just about ready to pull this old poly off the greenhouse. That's the only fun part. Then you got to dispose of it, and then the long process of pulling the new one back on. So that's the blower fan, it's a little squirrel cage fan that inflates the 2 layers. So just to make this quick, we're just going to cut this thing out. You don't need to save any of the plastic. And we have a little jumper tube here as well. So the air gets blown into the main top covers, and then the little jumper tube feeds some air down to the roll-up sides, just for some more insulation. Cut that out of there too. There we go. Just about ready to pull the cover off. There, now you can see how this works. This is the aluminum lath, and the poly goes between it and the roll bar. So there's the roll bar that can roll this side up when it's hot out. It's mid to upper 30s and fairly calm. It's been like 2 to 3 mile an hour winds all day. I think it's 4 to 5 now. Right at this very moment, it's calm enough that we would be able to put the new sheets on today. I'm not sure if I'm going to have it ready. It's going to get dark on me in a couple hours, so we'll probably tackle that tomorrow. But perfect weather to remove the old plastic. With all of the poly fasteners removed, you can now see how loose the plastic is, just laying up there. That's what it's going to look like when we pull the new plastic on. Maybe slightly tighter, because it'll be attached at both end walls. And it won't tighten up until we hook up the blowers and inflate it with air. You can probably see how much the south wall of this greenhouse is leaning in. Right there. It's leaning in like that. But I'm going to attempt to straighten that up and then secure it with some angle braces so the wind cannot do this again in the future. Let's go up there and see if we can get attached to it and straighten this up. Believe it or not, that is almost straight up and down inside here as I can get my door open. There you can see how it's curved. So the top is about where I want it, but about halfway down on each side it's still curved or kind of leaning way in. So gonna have to support it in several spots, it looks like. Well, the greenhouse is all braced up and ready for plastic first thing in the morning, but it's getting too dark to work now. Tomorrow morning we'll get the plastic rolled out right here and show you the process of pulling the poly over the greenhouse. Good morning. It's the next day and we're ready to put plastic on here in a little bit. Here's our 6 rolls of poly for 3 of our greenhouses. Let's get it on the forklift and get it over to the greenhouse and unroll it. Now before we work on pulling the poly over, I wanted to show you what I did to correct this wall that was leaning in quite a bit from the wind. I think I got it pretty straight now. So I did 4 things to get that straight. I put this cross piece in right here. This one right here. And just put a carriage bolt through that end up to that 2x4. And then you can see that 2x4 right there. That helps brace the peak down to those 4x4s holding the heater. And then up here at the top, I also have a pretty rigid old water line that's screwed to the first 6 bows or hoops, whatever you want to call them. Helps give it a little more rigidity up there at the peak when the wind's really blowing in from the south. So this poly is considered a 4-year film. We usually get at least 5 years out of it. On this greenhouse in particular, I've gone 6 years just because we only use it for a couple months a year to start our seeds. That's why we call this our transplant house, for growing seeds to transplants to be ready to take out into the field. Now on this greenhouse, we're only putting on clear plastic, UV treated clear plastic. On the other ones, we'll do a clear layer on top, and then on the bottom layer we'll use an IR plastic, an infrared plastic, and it just helps keep that heat inside the greenhouse better. But on this one, it's only used for several months a year, so we go with the cheaper option of 2 clear layers. I am noticing a few wind gusts from time to time, maybe only 6 or 7 miles an hour, but that can be enough to ruin everything when you're trying to pull plastic over. I would prefer 0 wind. 2, 3, 4 mile an hour is not too bad, but 6, 7, 8 mile an hour makes it nearly impossible. So next I'm going to go ahead and move this old plastic here and roll out our second roll that I have on the front of the forklift. That way we got both of them ready to go. So, you know, I can't lock anything into place on the greenhouse until both layers are up on the greenhouse, and then we can put our poly lock system on and our wiggle wires on the end walls. All right, the first step in preparing this to be ready to pull over the greenhouse frame is to find one of the edges. So here, you know, we got multiple folds. Just fold it up like 6 times over to get it, you know, into that width. But this is 42 feet wide. So we want to find one of the corners. There's an outside corner. We're probably only about 5 or 6 feet from the end. There's the end corner. We're going to put our first rope right here. So I'm going to gather a nice big handful of it and then wrap this rope around several times so it doesn't come loose. Just a simple double knot. We'll hold it. Now we're going to do that at 4 locations along the length of the plastic. Throw the ropes over the greenhouse where 2 people, my sons, will be over there pulling as I help feed the plastic up. There's so many folds in this plastic, you got to very carefully unfold it as it's getting pulled up, and we don't want to get any slices on any jagged edges anywhere, so it's a tedious process. All right, we have 4 separate locations along the length of the plastic with ropes that are already thrown over the hoops, and we're just about ready to start pulling this up. But before we do, we need to kind of open this plastic up, fluff it up a little bit, because it's folded so tight it'd be impossible to pull it up the way it is. All right, we got the plastic pulled apart pretty well. There's still a couple folds in it. We're gonna go ahead and try to start feeding it up on the greenhouse. All right, we got one sheet just about into place. We'll get it stretched out and snugged up, and I'll put one little temporary poly lock on each corner just to hold it in place while we're pulling the second sheet over. All right, we got sheet number 1 pulled into place, and I'm putting one of the poly locks on a couple of the corners, just one on each of the 4 corners. And the wind's coming from the north, so I put one little piece of wiggle wire up on the top of the peak to make sure the wind doesn't catch it and like pull it off. I've had that happen numerous times in the past. I've had a sheet completely on the greenhouse, and then a 8 or 9 or 10 mile an hour gust of wind comes and has pulled the whole thing off and went over on the other side, and then we have to start all over. So this will prevent that from happening. All right, now it's time for sheet number 2. A lot of folds in it still. on, Gavin. Alright, just about got the second sheet on here. Now we just want to get both sheets squared up so there's an equal amount of overhang on all four corners. And it's time to lock her down. Alright, both sheets are in. We have it tacked at 4 locations on the back wall because that's where the wind's coming from. So now what we're going to do is all 3 of us, my 2 boys and I, are going to pull all the plastic this way to the south. And then I'll put a wiggle wire at the top corner right there and 1 poly lock at each of those, at each ends. And hopefully we'll have it nice and snug, and then we can start permanently attaching the poly locks all the way down. Well, this is what a greenhouse looks like that has its poly lock on. No wiggle wires on the end walls yet, and no roll bars with the aluminum lath on the bottom yet. All right, now that the poly lock is on, plastic's not going to go anywhere, but I can still pull some of this loose slack this way to the north, to the end I'm on. So I'm going to make sure I get a hold of both sheets, and I just like to keep it snug as I go. I mean, it would be nice to have a second person, but it's not really necessary as long as you keep it snug as you go. And I'm real careful putting the wire in the channel here that I don't rip the plastic. So you can see how that wiggle wire zigzags right into the channel. After today, I remember why I hate doing this. At least it's only once every 5 years, 4, 5, 6 years. However, since I have 5 greenhouses, basically means I have to do this once a year. All right, we're standing inside the greenhouse. The poly is all on. Feels good to have it done before there was any wind. The wiggle wires are on both ends. The poly locks are on. Now we just have to finish up the roll bar and the aluminum lath for the roll-up sides tomorrow, and hook up the blower here to inflate the 2 sheets of plastic, and then it will be officially completed. I could probably finish everything today, but today is Sunday. It's late in the afternoon. I'm tired, and there's no inclement weather in the forecast, so we're going to finish everything tomorrow. Okay, the 3rd and final day of replacing the poly on our transplant greenhouse. I mean, we could have got all this done in one day, but we just worked on it a few hours each day. There's a 10 to 12 mile an hour breeze today, and there's no way we could have put the plastic on today. I know you probably can't see it through the camera, but it is blowing pretty good. Woo! My goodness. Okay, the roll bar for the roll-up sides and the aluminum lath are all in place. I have to go back and put more screws in now. I just have my son helping me hold it in place while I kind of temporarily tacked it in. So we'll finish that up, and then I'll show you how we hook up the inflator. The best part, filling up the 2 layers with air. Well, what do you know? It's starting to warm up a little bit. The sun came out. It feels nice. All right, now that the aluminum lath is attached to the roll bar with a tech screw or a drill screw every 1.5 feet all the way down, now we can trim off the excess. If you're wondering what we do with all of our excess plastic, you know, small scraps like this, we'll just throw in our burn pile when we're burning boxes and things like that, cardboard. But the great big sheet that was covering the greenhouse that I have over here that we pulled off the other day, I have burned it in the past, but you know, it's kind of frowned upon. So we'll stick it in our dumpster and have the landfill come and get it. I don't know what's worse, putting that in the landfill or burning it. What do you think? Let me know down in the comments what you would do with all of this poly. And it's not just me, remember. We're talking about hundreds and thousands of greenhouses around the United States changing plastic every year. You gotta do something with it. Maybe it can be recycled, I don't know. I'm sure someone's trying to recycle this stuff. I'm gonna roll up this sidewall, show you how it works. This is how we ventilate our greenhouse during the hot summer months. So, when you got a lot of heat and humidity in late spring, early summer, the natural ventilation will come through the entire greenhouse, because we'll roll the other side up too, and it'll blow it all right out. Works pretty good. Now it's time for the fun job. We're getting ready to hook up the inflator to inflate these 2 layers of plastic. And boy, does it feel good in here. Now that the sun is out, I have to have sunglasses on because I can hardly see. It's really bright, and it's about 75 degrees in here. All right, what we need to do to get this ready to put the inflator tube in here to blow these 2 layers up is we need to remove this wiggle wire right here. Give us a little bit of slack in the plastic to work in. And we're gonna remove this 1 poly lock piece. See if I can get it off without damaging the plastic. Here it comes. Now we can easily reach in here to cut a little hole for installing the tube. So what we need to do is attach this up here like this. So I'm going to remove these old foam pieces. The plastic's going to be sandwiched in between these 2 foam pieces, and then I can shove that tube up into the hole. Here's my 2 new pieces. We're going to put one right here, and then one on the other side of the inner layer of plastic. So what I want to do is take a magic marker and trace a little circle inside that ring so I know how big to cut the hole. Okay, I think we want to put it about right there. That looks pretty good. I'm just going to draw a little line around here. Good enough. All right, so I got my hand between the 2 layers of plastic. We want to be careful to not cut too big of a hole. We want this to be a snug fit. There we go. Now I'm going to take one of these rings, and these have an adhesive on one side. We'll peel that off, and we're going to stick this through the hole. Actually, I think I'm going to come around this way. Just try to get it centered around the hole. And it's okay if the plastic's not cut real good because it's flexible. And the plastic, like I said, is a little damp, so it's not sticking that great. That's all right, we stapled these together. We just want to temporarily stay there for the moment. Now I got my second one. We're gonna line it right up with the other one. I got the handy dandy stapler. And we'll just staple this together all the way around. So it can't pop out. There we go. Now we're going to take the blower tube and work it in through those rings. We want it to be a very snug fit because on a windy day it can pop out when it's flapping all around. Get in there. It's going in. I think we're in good enough. There it is. All right, that is complete. So I'm gonna go back outside, seal it back up, put the wiggle wire back and that poly lock back, and we'll fire up the blower. Every so often on these little squirrel cage blowers, you gotta clean out the little fins full of dust and dirt and dead bugs. All right. A lot of dust and crap in there. And it's all gonna get blown up into the plastic, but that's all right. All right, let's fire it up and see if she works. Sounds like it's working good. So we'll check back in about 15 minutes and hopefully these 2 layers are nice and tight like a balloon. While we're waiting for this to inflate, I got to install some eye bolts. You can see there's some old holes there. I got to drill a new hole into the wood behind that because they don't always line up. And we'll put an eye bolt in, maybe 7 down each side. And then we'll run some rope. It'll be zigzagged up and down the full length of the greenhouse, and that'll keep that that 4-foot roll-up side from flapping in the wind. On a windy day, that thing will be clanging all over the place. So we definitely need to put ropes on there to hold that down. Thread them in there. Let's use a screwdriver to help thread it in. So this eye bolt serves 2 purposes. First and foremost, it's for the rope. So I have the next eye bolt's down here at the ground. Not sure if you can see that. So I'll have a rope come through here, back down to the eye bolt on the baseboard, and back up. But the other purpose it serves is it keeps this poly lock locked in. If we got a really, really high windy day, I've seen these poly locks get popped off from the wind pressure just blowing this around. All right, about 15 minutes has passed. Isn't that awesome? Just like a balloon. And I'm guessing we got about 12 to 14 inches between the 2 layers. I can kind of see the other layer underneath there. It's a good insulation barrier against the cold. I got a barrel of rope left over from my old high tunnel I used to have. And we're going to use that for securing our roll-up sides. Now I'm going to put this in 2 pieces. I'm not going to run one continuous piece, because if it breaks, then the whole thing is exposed to the potential of flapping around in the wind. So I'm going to break it in half and we'll do 2 sections. There we go. Officially, completely done. Man, does that feel good to have this one cranked out. I'm glad we didn't wait until today to put the poly on, because it was a little breezy. Everything went smoothly, didn't have any issues whatsoever. Looks like it's holding air well. In just a few weeks, we'll be bringing our first planting of hydroponic tomatoes out here to put inside the greenhouse. It's hard to believe it's that time of the year already. We're ready to tackle another greenhouse here in a few weeks. It's hard to believe I still got to do this 3 more times. Normally we would crank one of these out in one day, but it was nice to kind of break it up into 3 partial days. This greenhouse over here, we call it our long house because it's an extra 50 feet longer than all the other ones. It's due for a plastic change too, but that one's gonna have to wait till next year because the other 3 are getting done first. But that one's a big job. Not looking forward to that one. The next one to tackle is the one behind it. We call it our tall house because it's the tallest house we have. And it's very steep and difficult to work on, so we'll definitely have to have some extra hands helping out when we tackle that one. Well, folks, that's a wrap on changing out the greenhouse plastic. 1 down, 3 to go. Feels good to have this one done, and we are ready for heat and plants. If you enjoyed the video, don't forget to give it a thumbs up. And as always, thank you so much for watching. I really appreciate it. And we'll see you again real soon down on the farm.